So years ago, well, not years ago, but before you, I was dating this woman. I was living up in San Francisco. And what was really interesting was it seemed like we had everything in common. We liked the same kind of music. I had a bike that I would ride. I was living in San Francisco at the time, so I'd ride to work across the Golden Gate Bridge. And so she went and bought a bike, and she bought the same make and model of my bike, just the female version. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess we like the same bike. And she was very agreeable.
I think I have an idea of where this is going.
She's very agreeable as a person. So the relationship was going really well, and we decided to move in together. And we moved in together, and I would say within the first month, suddenly the rules started changing, and suddenly things that were totally cool before we were living together were suddenly not cool at all.
Oh.
And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? It felt like a total bait and switch.
Ouch.
That's what I thought. I was like, this isn't right. You see, because today we're talking about love unfiltered, and we're talking about being, what that means to us is really being authentic, being your true self, letting your freak flag fly so that your beloved can find you, right?
Yeah. I mean, love unfiltered means, it doesn't mean that on the first date you have to spill all the gory details, skeletons out of the closet.
No,
that's not what we're saying.
No, don't do
that. But what we are saying to some degree is date the way you want to mate. Mm-hmm. I think on one level, right? Date the way you want to mate. So if you're a woman and you want to be, you want somebody to be the financial support in the family, and you want to raise the kids and be a stay-at-home mom, great. Then date that way, right? If you're somebody who doesn't want to have kids and you want to retire young and travel the world with your beloved and maybe have all these, like charitable things that you do or something, I don't know, whatever that is that you want to do with your beloved, then date that way. I think a lot of what we're talking about to take the filters off, because everybody's showing up filtered these days. Everything on social media, everybody's fixing their images. Actually, I'm looking at us and there's some weird thing happening where the color keeps, changing. I'm like, we're not doing that. I don't know. We're talking about love unfiltered.
And we have a weird sort of color.
Yeah, there's a weird color thing that keeps happening here. And I just keep thinking to myself, well, what love unfiltered means to me a lot of is letting people be wrong about you. And that if you're trying to control the way people feel about you and think about you and say about you, you're going to waste a lot of energy trying to control what other people do. And I think one of the most important things to recognize in life, and one of the most empowering steps you can ever take in life and in love, is to recognize that you never have control over another person. You only have control over what you feel, what you think, and what you do. And so to love unfiltered is to stop trying to present yourself in such a way where this person you're hot for is, to somehow get them to likey you,
Well, I think about a lot when we're talking about dating with our clients. We oftentimes get this question: when is the right time
to blah, blah.
Talk about? When is the right time to bring up? And we would say the right time is when it's organically comes up.
I can't watch this cycling anymore. I'm going to try to just set it. Okay, there's my hand in the camera. Let's see if it works, because that thing was making me crazy.
So, for example, on our first date, Orna was telling all these stories about these kids.
This is a mistake.
This newborn kid, right, or young kid that her friend had, and she telling all these stories about the kid. Well, he was young though; he was a couple years old. And then she was also telling stories about her nieces. And at some point, I was like, well, so that's interesting. So you keep talking about kids. So,
You didn't say that.
I didn't say it? What did I say?
You said, so I know it's kind of early. We'd been flirting for almost 2 months.
Yeah.
And here we were on our first date at dinner, and you looked at me and you said, so I know it's kind of early, but where are you on the whole kids thing? Do you want them?
Right.
You didn't say you've been talking about kids.
Right.
That would have had a different response.
That would have had a different response.
Yeah.
I got it. So, but the point was, it was our first date, and we had the conversation about kids. Now,
right then.
wasn't Was that the right time to have the conversation? To me, it was the right time because she was talking about kids, and I was curious about how she felt about kids, right?
And I just want to say this, that your answer has to be where you really stand, right? There's no time about when to talk about something. The thing is you don't want to force something.
Right.
You know, if Matthew had been like obsessing about, well,
if I had my list of questions, right?
Yeah.
So, what do you think about kids? Uh-huh.
Like it's a job interview.
So when
right?
you retire, where do you want to move to? If you know, if you ran into an ex, do you like being tickled? Right. I mean, so we didn't have the list of questions that we were hoping to make sure we had answered before we could decide to move forward.
It just organically came up. So you can organically ask anybody anything you want at any time you want to ask it. I mean, you're reminding me, because I dated a guy before you, obviously.
Yeah.
I love how we have BM before Matthew and we have BO before Orna. Hilarious. So before Matthew, I was in a relationship with this guy. We went on a backpacking trip with my friends. It was a long, it was out to Point Reyes.
Oh, I remember this guy.
Oh yeah, and it was a fun trip. I think it was on the pack out, not the pack in, where we just started asking each other, we hadn't been dating that long. We had gone to college together, but we reconnected later and started dating. So it was like the year 2000 or so. And we started, it started being like the question of favorite things.
Uh-huh.
And so, he'd ask me, what's your favorite whatever, like ice cream flavor, and I'd answer. And then when I asked him something, just whatever, what's your favorite blah, blah, whatever question. And he would be like, oh, I don't know, what's yours? And then he'd wait and then agree with me, whatever I said. And I took it as suspect. Like you started that story about your girlfriend, and I know the one in the Bay Area you're talking about, where she had the same bike as you and all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
And everything was just like you until you guys move in together. And then, the bait and switch.
Yeah.
And so I was just, I didn't even know you, but I was suspect about this guy whenever I asked a question about what he liked about this or that, whatever, he would throw it back to me first and then agree with me. And so my little radar, like this little antenna of like my something bullshit meter. Something wasn't right, something. And the thing is, I dated that guy for a good long time, and it's one of the few relationships that actually I initiated the breakup.
Uh-huh.
And I initiated the breakup because he had lied to me about something that was really important. And I'm going to share what it is, even though it makes me feel really stupid. So please be kind. Please be kind. But before I share my sad sob story of feeling really stupid because I was duped, I just want to introduce myself. Hi, everybody. I'm Orna Walters.
I'm Matthew Walters, and you are here with Love Intervention, where we intervene in your love life and get you on the path to long-lasting, soul-satisfying love. So why don't a couple people share where they're coming in from? We'd love to say hello to everybody.
Yeah, just type in the chat.
So type in the chat.
Let us know where you are right now. Like maybe you're not where you live. Maybe you're on a business trip, or you're visiting family, or you're on vacation. Wherever you are at this moment on the globe, just say hello. Let us know where you are.
Oh, we have somebody in the Bay Area.
Somebody in the Bay Area. Maybe she knows
Marissa.
your ex. No, I'm just kidding. So, okay, here's my I feel stupid story with a guy who wasn't willing to be unfiltered with me, but I can't date anybody who smokes.
Right.
Like, I can't be around cigarette smoke. When I started online dating, I had all over my profile, non-smoker, 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 as clear as could be. And every guy ended up going out with it. At this point, you could still smoke in bars or restaurants, in Los Angeles, California. And so I'd go out and meet somebody, and we'd be sitting at the bar, and they would bum a cigarette off somebody. And I'd be like, whoa, what's up? Oh, I only smoke when I drink. I'm like, I'm out of here. Like it happened over and over and over again.
Right.
And so then I reconnect with this fellow I knew from college, and we started dating. And somewhere along the way, I guess he knew that I don't know if I'd said something or if it just came up.
I'm sure you said something.
I'm sure it came up because he had a roommate that smoked.
Right.
So I think we probably, at one point going over to his house, I was like, oh, I can't be around cigarette smoke. He's like, oh, my roommate smokes. And that's the path I'm going to get on feeling stupid because I believed him. Like, he fooled me for about a year, a little over a year, that he didn't smoke.
Right.
So he worked production, and I found cigarettes in his stuff for work.
Right.
But those were someone else's. I woke up in the night when we were out of town in a hotel room, and I was like, oh, it smells like smoke in here. That's so weird. And he said, oh, I went down. I couldn't sleep. I went down to the bar, and I guess it was really smoky in there. Like, I mean, I could literally go over and over and over all of these times that he duped me into believing he wasn't the one smoking.
Right.
And the roommate was his biggest cover, right? The roommate that smoked.
Yeah.
And so, I'd leave the bedroom and go down the hall to go use the restroom in the night, and the whole house was full of cigarette smoke. Oh, it's the roommate.
Right.
Like, oh, brother. I wonder how many mints or gum or mouthwash. I don't know what was going on there.
You'd think he have a little fan to just blow the smoke away from him,
Yeah, and boy, when I found out, I ended the relationship.
Right.
And I remember he was like, oh, come on. Well, I can't just be the smoking. And I said, you're right. It's also the lying. Hence, love unfiltered.
Yes.
Right? So, nobody wants to be duped. And so we all, when we think about we talk a lot with our clients about deal breakers. Who thinks they have a deal breaker here? Type in the chat, just say me, if you think you know what your deal breakers are.
And while we're waiting for that, I just want to say Kim says hi from Houston.
Hi, Kim.
And then Tina from Los Angeles.
Hey, Tina.
And we're here in Love on Purpose headquarters in Marina Del Rey, California.
We are in Marina Del Rey, California. By the way, this is going to turn into an Ask Me Anything sort of situation. So ask us anything, an AMA kind of question answer thing. And what I want to share with you is type your questions, think of them. They can be about loving unfiltered and love unfiltered, but it can be about anything. You can ask us about ourselves, about whatever's going on in your dating life, your love life, whatever you want to ask us. We're going to be opening it up to questions. And if you're watching this on our Facebook page, please put your questions right there. We have a team member. Thank you very much for porting questions over from Facebook into our chat here, so we'll see them from Facebook.
Be sure on Facebook to give us a like and a share as well to keep spreading the word. And if you're on YouTube, click the bell to subscribe. You can also put your question or any of your responses into the comment section on YouTube, and our team will get it over here to us.
I think somebody might have missed the last one. Tina says, how was our spring break vacation? But that's actually when your family was visiting.
Wow, that was a month ago.
Yeah, we've been back since then. So you can check out a replay if you missed the last one. But yeah, we had family visiting from out of town, and we had a nice vacation.
It rained.
Although, boy, it poured. It poured every day. It was, in that regard,
you don't expect somebody to come visit you in Los Angeles and have
rain every day.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't just rain. It was an atmospheric river. I mean, it was like, it rained unfiltered.
Yes,
it was just, it was pouring out. So this whole idea of loving unfiltered, right? We like to say, Matthew said it earlier, but I think it bears repeating. We always say, let your freak flag fly so your beloved can find you. Because we fall in love, and I hate that saying. I was like, I've been trying to change that forever, and I finally came up with something. It's going to be in a love note soon. So if you're not subscribed to our love notes weekly, you can go to loveonpurpose.com and subscribe. So we send out a newsletter every Monday. It's gone out every single Monday since 2009 without fail. And we always put a little love note quote. That's how it starts off there. So we send you a little love note, and my opposition to falling in love is going to be in the next love note. Now I have to write the whole thing.
You do. You finally have to write it.
Yeah.
So a couple people have spoken up and said they have deal breakers. If you would if you're open, we don't have to share your name. You can just type your deal breaker into the chat.
Yeah,
type something to you that's not obvious. Now we know cheating, right? We know alcoholism. We know things like that
are obvious. Smoking too.
Obvious deal breakers, right?
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, I don't care who it is. Like my celebrity crush forever was Ewan McGregor, and then there he was on the cover of GQ magazine with the cigarette, and I was like, sorry, Ewan, it's over between us. Yeah, it was over before it ever started. So I just want to say, like, whatever you think your big deal breaker is, right? Just go ahead and put it in the chat, and if it doesn't have to be a foundational thing. Like, obviously, you want. Every relationship is based on trust. So anything that would have a betrayal involved is automatically a deal breaker. So we don't mean something like that.
Yeah.
But we mean something that you think is a deal breaker, right?
I want to throw something in there that maybe, like things that a lot of people put on as deal breakers, like height or income or.
I'm going to say the thing.
Say it.
Yeah, because women, the size queen ladies think that they need a man with a big dick. I'm going to say it. Right?
Yes, and welcome Facebook.
Men sometimes think they need the woman with the big, girl, the big rack or whatever, or the nice round behind, or whatever. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I want people to really understand that those, the things, I think sometimes a lot of people think how much income somebody has could be a deal breaker. Frequent regular porn, that's a good one, because for some people that's not a deal breaker. Absolutely. Right. Someone who lies about their age on the dating apps by 10 years and doesn't tell me when we first meet. I love that you said doesn't say, because we have, particularly right now, we have a lot of clients that are in their third act. We have a few ladies in their third act right now that are dating, and they're all super healthy and super active.
Yeah.
And so we're telling them to change their age on their profile so they don't end up dating somebody 10 years. They don't get the men in their 80s.
Generally, men tend to skew younger.
Look in their search.
Yeah,
right? But we always tell them to clean it up when you first meet.
It's not a horrible idea to make a little adjustment in your age so that men who are closer to you in age will find you in a search. But Marissa says, when you first meet, you want to clarify. You want to clear things up.
I did that. I mean, when I look, I'm going to be 57 June 1st, y'all. So I know I don't look my age. If you think I do or whatever, I don't care. But when I was 40 and dating, I looked 30. And so it didn't make any sense. It was always an age range at that time when I was online dating. So it's like, are you between this and this? And the cutoff was a 40. And I was like, well, I don't look my age. Thank you. It's genetic. Everybody says, you look great. And I'm like, I honestly, it's genetics. So I'm grateful for my good genes. And I want to say, when I was 40 and I looked 30, I knew I looked 30, so there was no point in putting 40 on my profile, but I always cleared it up as soon as if I met the person in person, and I would just say, look, this is my actual age, and then I would get you're 40 and never been married, like a lot of the time. So that's another part of the unfiltered, right? Loving unfiltered showing up. I mean, I did get a lot of, especially once I hit 40 and I'd never been married. I remember I was set up on a date with a guy who kept asking me, like, it was so weird. Like, he was like, so you've never been married? You've never been married? You've never been married? I mean, just like couldn't get over it.
Yeah.
And finally, I didn't mean to be rude, but I couldn't hold back. Like, I just said something like, I'm sorry, but if I'm going to get married, I'm only doing that one time. And he was divorced. So, I mean, I could have sat there across the table from him like, you've been divorced? Oh my God, you've been divorced? I mean, I don't understand that. So what we're trying to say, and I used to be somebody who would very much pretzel twist to earn love. I mean, I remember I met my friend's brother, and when I was in college, one of my good friends, her brother was stunningly gorgeous, and he was like hot, tall drink of water, hot. And I was like, oh my gosh, I so wanted to go out with him. And I did. And we were boyfriend and girlfriend for a while. And I ended that relationship because he was hot and boring. He was so boring. Oh my God. Like, hot was not all that it's cracked up to be.
Right.
He was boring.
Yeah.
I can't be with somebody boring.
Yeah. So we have some people who put in their deal breakers. Where do you want to go with that?
I wanted to have have more to talk about, and we did.
Oh, okay, great. I didn't know if you were going to do something else with that. So,
okay,
we're talking about love unfiltered, and if any of you have questions, start thinking of them, because we're going to open it up for questions about love, dating, relationship, anything you want to ask.
Sex.
This money. Is your opportunity. Money? Yeah, sure, we can talk about money.
People always have that as a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I always think it's interesting that, especially women today really, I think, want to be in a partnership. Tell us if you want to be in a real partnership, ladies, right? Like, that's what I wanted. I wanted to be in a real partnership with somebody. And to me, that meant that decisions that directly affect me, I have to have input on.
Yeah.
Like, if there are decisions that you make for yourself, like what you're going to eat for lunch, knock yourself out. Like, have whatever you want. But if it's what we're having for lunch and you're cooking, I better have input on that. He's laughing because he knows.
Yes.
Yeah, you want to be in a real partnership.
Yes, we have a couple of people who jump in and say they want to be in a real partnership.
And at the same time, I do think there's still I don't know if it's a stigma, I don't know if that's the right word, but I do think that a lot of ladies are concerned about how much income a man makes, even though they still want to be in a partnership. We had a client that on the third date, I think it was a third date, she wanted to ask the guy about his finances, and we said, absolutely not, that is unacceptable. So when we're talking about love unfiltered, we're not talking about what you can and can't ask another person, but we are saying what is your impetus for asking that thing.
Right.
On a third date, you have no business knowing what anybody's finances are. When you start talking about getting married someday, that's the conversation around.
I think if you're in an exclusive relationship with somebody, you can begin to have those conversations. Because it's about whether or not you have an agenda. So love unfiltered is not having an agenda, right? And if you're concerned about somebody's finances on the third date because you want to make sure you don't end up dating somebody who makes less money than you, or maybe has too much debt than you're comfortable with, or whatever the thing is, that's not love unfiltered. That's just control, right? That's just somebody who's a bit of a control freak and trying to manage and manage the other person and make sure that they don't, quote unquote, make a mistake.
I think it's important for us so when we're talking about love unfiltered, we're talking about as showing up as your authentic self. And I think authenticity is such a big buzzword, and I know we've defined it on previous episodes of our Love Intervention, but I don't know if these people have been listening before or they're just brand new. So
yeah, go for it.
I think it's important to define what we mean by showing up authentically. So, if you're going to write it down or you want to record me, here you go. Being authentic means one thing and one thing only. It means that you are speaking how you feel, regardless of the expectations or perceived expectations of others. And I'll say that again. Being authentic means only one thing. It means speaking how you feel, not what you think, how you feel, regardless of the expectations or perceived, aka you made them up, perceived expectations of others. So regardless of the expectations of others. So when Matthew asked me, because he didn't say, hey, you've been talking about kids, blah, 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 whatever.
Right.
Do you want some of your own someday? Whatever. That's not how he asked the question. But it was tossed out there because I had shared probably too many stories.
It wasn't too many stories.
About my
There's a lot of stories. It wasn't too many. There's no judgment here. You're funny.
Friends,
kids. Man, I can't believe she keeps talking about kids. Ooh, right?
Well, if you'd have done that, I would have known we were...
That's not at all what I was thinking. You're funny.
You're so cute. Okay, I never ask a man's income, but most end up telling me after a few dates. Yeah, look,
good for them.
Somebody who's open about that and wants you to know. It says a lot about somebody's interest in you. I think if they start showing up, naked in a sense, naked with their finances. I went through a traumatic experience where my boyfriend tried to kill me. And if that's news for you, I'm a survivor of domestic violence. It's kind of all over the place in the work we do. And it's a lot of the reason why I do what we do, because I think there's a stigma attached to it. People tell me all the time I should not tell that story, so I'm going to tell it over and over again.
Yeah.
Because that is part of the love unfiltered. But I remember going back into therapy after that event, and I know what my therapist meant, but it sat with me really weird the way she presented it. Because what she said to me was, Orna, you don't have to tell anybody about what happened to you. You don't have to tell anybody that you're a survivor of domestic violence. Mm-hmm. You could get married to somebody and never tell that person. And literally, I felt like my therapist didn't understand who I am as a person anymore because it felt so disingenuous.
Right.
That I could have, and I know what she was saying is I have options. Like it's not like I'm walking around with
it's not like you have to wear like a badge,
scarlet letter, whatever. That I'm not wearing this thing
printed
on the
outside. A T-shirt.
Yeah, I'm not walking around with everybody. I don't need to tell everybody I know, or I don't have to share it, or because it was for so long. I think my big, like a deep dark secret that I didn't want anybody to know. it also went along with the fact that I felt broken and unlovable. So, feeling broken and unlovable and having somebody that you love try to kill you kind of messes with your head a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and so it made me very sort of gun shy. And I think that a lot of times when we have bad experiences, we try to sort of navigate those by limiting what we share with somebody. And I think the first time I ever told you that my therapist said I could get married to somebody and never tell them, you were like, no, oh my God, I would have to know. Like, that would be weird. And
yeah.
It would be weird.
It would be weird.
Yeah, and I think what we're trying to say is that when you're showing up from an authentic place, when you're showing up to say, this is who I am, and that you end up meeting somebody who wants to embrace all of those parts of you, right? That somebody that you want to partner up to go through life with is somebody who sees all of those parts of you and chooses you anyway. I think it's one of the most important things, that it's unrealistic to think that you're never going to get upset or have a conflict or a disagreement or whatever you want to call it, a fight, a misunderstanding, a miscommunication when you're sharing your life with somebody. You will. And so it's how you navigate through those experiences. And the dating process is really meant to be a selection process that you do over time. And I'm always saying, to delay that exclusivity until you've been through some bumps, right? Because then you can end those really short relationships that don't make it through that, that period where two people start to individuate from one another.
Yeah. We always say, don't shy away from conflict early on. Let it happen, like Orna's is saying here, right?
Like if you have a differing opinion than who you're sitting across the table from,
because how you talk through that says everything about the life of the relationship and whether it can
don't
survive.
Avoid those conflicts. I'm not saying create them. I'm not saying make a big stink out of them. I remember once Matthew said to me, it was pretty early in our marriage, actually. I think we've been married only a couple of years. And Matthew, I don't remember exactly the details, but he said something like, I know you have to fight about this. And I started laughing. I thought it was hilarious. I said, no, I don't have to. I'm willing to. I'm willing to fight about it. I'm willing to fight about it now, so it's not a landmine in our relationship later. I'm going to clean it up now kind of person. And I know that sounds really scary. And I want you to understand that I wasn't always this person. I used to be a person that was conflict avoidant. And when, if somebody was like, oh, this is the way it needs to be, I'd be like, oh, okay, like a little mouse or something. And I stopped being that person because I was miserable. And when I realized, I can show up, and then the right people show up now, and resonate. The right people show up for me, the right friends, the right mate, the right clients, the right people watching us right now. Hi, right people. Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
And if you're clicking off right now, then you're not our people. So I wish you well.
Oh, exactly. So let's just remind everybody why we're here. I'm Matthew Walters.
Hi, everybody. I'm Orna Walters.
And this is Love Intervention. We're here to intervene in your love life. And what that means is we're gonna get in there and get you off the path of frustration and heartbreak and all that, and get you on the path to long-lasting love.
I'm not going to say the person's name, but I'm going to say this question. It's a really sweet question. And I just dealt with somebody who was having this issue. But this person says, I have ADHD and have a tendency to overshare. What tips do you have for me? Is there a set of questions or topics I should stick to on my first date? So here's the thing. There isn't a set of questions, although there is a blog post on our website. If you go to the blog, it's got a great search function, depending on your mobile device or your desktop, wherever you are. But if you scroll past those, however many articles show up on that first page of our main blog page, there is a search function that's great. There's something like, is it questions to get to know somebody?
Yeah.
But it's more like it's not first date, second date. It's not spelled out like that. However, you want to be careful, and it says so in that article about what you're expecting to find out. Because the way people present when you ask them a question, you can't do hypotheticals and get anywhere. It's really easy. The person that I don't want to say the person's name, just that, whatever. I know you're probably somewhere where nobody else is, but that's okay. So here's the thing. When you have a tendency to overshare, it probably means you're a little bit nervous. Because this person happens to be female, I'm assuming that you date men. If you date other women, it would be different. So please let us know whether If I'm going to make the assumption that you're dating men. So you can let us know in the chat if I'm wrong. But here's the deal. When you're the female and you're dating men, this is the difference between being in your feminine energy versus being in your masculine energy. Somewhere along the way, feminine energy got a bad rap as being passive, which is a load of crap. Hi, let me say that again. Feminine energy is not passive. That's a load of crap. Okay? Feminine energy is powerful. That the power of the feminine is that the feminine waits to respond. They wait to respond. So it's more of a responsive energy, whereas masculine energy leads. So we're going to use
more of a directive energy.
A directive and leads. So thank you for qualifying that you date men. Thank you. So I like to use the visual of two ballroom dancers. Okay, so if you ever watch any kind of partner dancing works, right? It could be ballroom, it could be swing, whatever. Any kind of partner dancing, tango, any of that stuff. It's the man's job to provide the solid foundation, and he leads so the female can do all the twirly, frilly stuff, right? And that's the beautiful dance they make together. So, if you've ever done any kind of dance, that if both people are trying to lead, you're going to step on each other's feet. And if both people are trying to follow, you're going to also step on each other's feet in a very different way. Right? So the masculine and feminine energetics of dating apply even in same-sex couples. So gender has nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, if you look at same-sex couples, you can always tell who's more in their masculine, who's more in their feminine, whether it's two women or two men. It's really obvious. And yet we blur the lines more more and more in this sort of today's world when it's a male and a female. And so I want to tell you that feminine energy is not passive, but it is responsive. So your role, in a sense, on those first few dates is to let the man lead. So if he's asking you questions, answer him, but you don't have to ask him very much at all. And you're also going to avoid rescuing him, which I'm going to let Matthew take over.
Yeah. So we had a client who was dating. Well, it was a first date. It was on a date with this guy, and he traveled from outside. He lived out in the country. She lived in a big city. He traveled in to spend the weekend to get to know her. And they'd never met in person before. But as soon as they did meet in person, it became really clear that there wasn't really any attraction there. Wasn't any chemistry. And yet here they had this weekend, right? And so what she started doing was she started to try, as she noticed how the conversation was getting more and more awkward, is she would step in and make it less awkward and make it okay. And then when, it seemed like they'd run out of steam at, the cafe they met at, she'd make a suggestion about what to go do next. So she was acting like the man. And, it didn't work out. It wasn't going to work out anyway because they weren't, but it's that impulse to step in and fix and solve and make things okay. It's so much better to let somebody just figure it out. Let the awkward silences.
Let the guy flop.
Let the awkward silences be there. I want to say this. You say you have ADHD and a tendency to overshare. I think oftentimes oversharing is, like Orna said, it comes from a nervousness, but it also comes from a desire to let people know who you really are, right? And to not hide anything. And so you'll share something and then you'll make a caveat to it. And then you'll say, well, I'm like this, but there was a time I did this, another time I did that. And so, and you'll start sharing all the exceptions to the rule to explain every part of you. And it's you don't really need to do that. But there's an extreme in the other direction as well that you want to avoid. We had a client and she wanted to come up with a way to not talk about something on an early date. And so she was trying to word it well, there's a story there, but I'll only share that with you when we get to know each other better.
Which is creepy.
It's creepy and it's a little off-putting, right? And it's what, is there some deep, dark secret that as I get to know you better, you're going to share with me? So you don't want to overcorrect into that weird extreme where you're saying, well, I'm going to be so buttoned up, I'm not going to share anything that may be unattractive about me.
I want to use the example of my friend that I spoke to recently. So I have a dear friend, and she's moving and needs to move. She's selling her house, and she's going to go into a rental. And the house is sold, and she has to get out. And she started looking at apartments and would overshare while she was looking and talking with the owner of a property. Like, she was looking at a house to rent, and she said, well, I could pay for the whole year up front, or I could give 6 months, or I could give 3 months, but I mean, I'm going to be here a year, and blah, 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 and I'm selling my house, and so I'll have plenty of money, and, like all of this stuff about that was superfluous to renting the apartment. And she was surprised that she didn't get some of the places, I got involved because she said, look, can you come with me? Because I don't know what's happening. I need to find a place to live.
Yeah.
And if you would be so kind to spend a few hours looking at places with me, and I recognized it really quick that she was oversharing, and I was like, oh, you know what? Like, if you find a place you like, take the application, fill it out, get it back to them, and you don't have to say anything. You can just say, hey, I really like your place. Like, you don't have to share all these details about the house is for sale. It's like what Matthew was saying, all of these qualifiers about what your intentions are and where you are. And I think part of that for this person, I think it's being comfortable in your own skin, like being really relaxed in who you are. So if you're looking for soulmate love, we kind of came up with this cute little equation. You want to type it into the chat? Because I think it's really...
Sure.
I think we put it in the last love, maybe not the last love note, but it's this is the equation. So emotional mastery plus self-love equals soulmate relationship. Soulmate love. Soulmate relationship. Right? Emotional mastery plus self-love. Oh, no, you said plus. Equals.
Oh.
Self-love equals soulmate love. Equals soulmate love. So here's the thing. Emotional mastery doesn't mean you never get triggered. Nah, what do you think of that? It is human to get triggered. What emotional mastery is knowing your triggers and taking responsibility for them. Self-love, I think, is self-explanatory. I realized at some point that if I didn't promise to love, honor, and cherish myself, that nobody would come into my life and bestow that on me, because I kept looking for it outside of me. I felt empty inside. I kept wanting somebody to fill the space inside. When I filled the space inside and took really good care of me and showed up as a whole and complete person, wow, it was amazing to find who I dated. I always say my boyfriends before Matthew were great guys, most of them, right? They weren't abusive or toxic or any of those things. They just weren't my guy for one reason or another. Like the smoker, you know what? Did he lie? Yes. Is he a bad person? I don't think so.
Yeah, just like the person I dated. I mean, she was a great person. She just
he
wasn't that authentic right at the beginning, you know?
And he wasn't my person. I mean, we're still friends on Facebook, right? If I bumped into him at Starbucks, I would be like, hey, how you doing? But it's not like, that wasn't my person. So the person who is nice to you, the person that you find appealing or attractive, I think the thing that we do is we get attached to a person instead of the concept of what we want around our soulmate relationship. Mm-hmm. I mean, I always find it so interesting that Matthew and I ended up with a business together. We met through a business networking group. Yeah. But both of us also had a vision of having our personal lives and our professional lives very much intertwined. So emotional mastery means you know your shit. It doesn't mean you don't lose your shit, right? Like I always say, having integrity doesn't mean you never make mistakes, right? Like having integrity doesn't mean you don't ever fall down. Having integrity is how you behave when you fall down, right? How you behave when you make a mistake. That's what having integrity is all about. So self-mastery isn't you don't ever lose your shit. It's what happens when you recognize, I'm sorry I lost my shit. Right. And we say that to each other when that stuff happens. But it's about taking responsibility, right? And
self-love is about when you accept yourself as you are. The
all
good,
the
the bad, and the ugly. You don't reject those parts of yourself. And it's also when you're willing to take actions that are difficult and uncomfortable but get you what you want.
For your highest
You have being in your integrity, right? Doing the things that, maybe it's like exercising regularly. You may not want to do it, but you're going to feel better when you do it.
I think also self-love has a level of self-compassion to it. I think that self-love and self-compassion work together because so many people, and myself included as a recovering perfectionist, we have an unrealistic expectation of self. And so we're very forgiving with other people, right? Mm-hmm. We're forgiving with our friends, with our family, and yet we hold ourselves to this unrealistic standard. And I used to do that. I used to be that person. And so everybody who's ever been on our team, anybody who's ever worked for us knows that when they screw up, that the first thing to say is, it sure sucks not being perfect. So if you need a mantra for yourself for when you make mistakes, to remind yourself to not take things so seriously is, boy, it sure sucks not being perfect.
Yeah.
You know, I spent a lot of time trying to be perfect, and again, I was miserable. So once I decided I was going to accept the fact that I'm not going to be perfect, life got a whole lot better and a whole lot easier. When you're striving for some kind of unrealistic standard for yourself, you can never let love in. You know, we always say that the biggest block to love is judgment, because on some level, all judgment is self-judgment. Mm-hmm. And so this idea of loving unfiltered means that you're going to show up. So if you did make a mistake and you screwed something up, you're going to say, boy, I'm really sorry I screwed that up. How can I fix that for you? Is there something you need?
Right.
You know, that's what taking responsibility and having emotional mastery is all about.
So the response we get is, I like this. I'm a work in progress with the emotional mastery and self-love. Been going to Codependence Anonymous to help me be mindful when codependent behaviors show up. I'm slowly getting to the point to show myself more grace.
Oh, I love that.
So I want to teach you a phrase. The sure sucks not being perfect is one of them, but another one that's really great is, I forgive myself for judging myself for, and fill in the blank. Right?
Yeah.
I forgive myself for judging myself for my codependent behaviors.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's a strategy you learned when you were growing up. You needed it in order to feel loved and safe in your family.
Yeah.
And it served a purpose. And so that part of you was always there to help you. Now, I always say it this way. If you ever had a friend and that friend just gave you bad advice, right? That you knew better than to take your friend's advice because it was not good advice. Would you think that that friend didn't love you? No. That friend clearly loves you because they are giving you advice. They want to try to help you, and they're your friend. And you want to think of that part of you that you have judgment about, whether it's codependency or whether you're twisting into a pretzel, whether it's you're trying to please somebody, whether it's perfectionism, whatever it is. You want to look at that part of you and say, hi friend, I get you are trying to help me. And I so appreciate you trying to help. However, we're going to do things different this time.
Yeah. And what I want to share is, you know, there's that understanding your codependent nature and those strategies lets you unwind them, but also don't be afraid to be interdependent with somebody. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't need Matthew when we first started dating, but all these years later, you better believe I need him now. You know, I need him. I mean, there's no way I could even do this work all on my own. And I certainly couldn't fly the plane like he does here with all the technology that's going on. He interfaces with our team. I'm just a little old lady in the house. Okay, I'm just kidding.
So funny.
Here's the deal, though, because I think people misunderstand that, right? That we have this fear of needing somebody or appearing needy. So every single human being has needs. And I grew up with a narcissist with a narcissist for a parent. There we go. So my mom was a narcissist. I used to joke that in the dictionary they should just have a picture of her under the definition. Malignant narcissist. And so I didn't want to have any needs because the only person that was allowed to have needs in my family of origin was my mom. And so she would, you know, she was like King Kong, you know, screaming about her needs and beating her chest, and it was ugly and I didn't like it. So I never wanted to have any needs. I mean, talk about, you know, I'm letting you in on who I used to be. But I remember I had a friend that moved away out of state, and I had something that happened that was very difficult, like a very trying event, and I was like, oh my God, who can I call? And I called her, and I left her a voicemail message where I sucked up the tears, and I left her a message like, hey, it's Orna. Call me back, okay? I'd like to catch up. Okay, bye. And like 2 weeks later or something, 2.5 weeks later, she calls me back and we get in touch, and I was like, oh my God, I can't wait, you know, it was like everything that had happened. And she says to me, Orna, you left me a message about catching up. I had no idea something was wrong. If you would have told me you needed to talk with me, I would have called you earlier. I would have called you early. I still hear her voice saying the words to me because I was like, oh, if I told her I needed her, she would have called me back. I was like, oh, earlier. I would have got what I wanted. It was such a light bulb moment because I was terrified of ever needing somebody. So don't go all the way over. I mean, we can't anyway. We can't recalibrate 180 degrees from where we were. You know those people that apologize even when you bump into them, right? You like accidentally bump into somebody like in the supermarket and they go, oh, I'm sorry. And they were just standing there, right? So we had a client like that once.
Yeah.
And we gave her an assignment of inconveniencing some people. Purposefully
bumping into people and not apologizing.
As an experiment. And it was funny because it was a group coaching program when we did this. I remember when we opened it to Q&A and somebody said, I don't think that's right that you told her to bump into people. And I was like, I said to bump somebody. I didn't say check her, knock them to the ground like you're tackling them in a football game.
Right.
And this wasn't somebody who was ever going to be, and like, in this experiment, it was funny. Like, I think it's important that those of you that aren't okay with taking up space, that's what we're talking about here today too. About really loving unfiltered.
Yeah.
I mean,
don't accept the crappy table at the restaurant.
Yeah, don't. The first table they're going to offer you is going to be right by the bus station or the kitchen where it's noisy. You deserve the quiet booth in the corner, even if it's not a date and you don't need it to be romantic. Maybe you're there with your girlfriend and you're going to dish for a while, whatever. I mean, I think that taking the idea of being okay with taking up some space, and I think that there's this misnomer about that if we take care of ourselves, we're somehow selfish. And yet, when we take care of ourselves, we're able to then take care of the people that we care about and that we love. And there's, when our cup is empty, right, then there's no point in trying to give to others from that empty space, right? So your job is to fill your own cup, but not just to full, but to overflowing. And so what's in your cup is for you. What's in the overflow, what's in the saucer, that's for everyone else. And I really want you to understand that being okay with having needs is so important. It's such a big part of loving unfiltered and really saying, ask somebody what they need.
Asking for what you need, right?
I remember, I'm going to share another story about us because I think they would get a lot of juice going. Unless you had something else.
There was something I want to comment to here. So somebody says, you summed up my problem. Earlier, I get attached to the person and let go of my full set of requirements for a forever relationship. It takes me way too long to break it off when I know I should.
Oh, so you summed up my problem earlier. I get attached. You said it weird. Earlier,
well, there was a colon there.
I was confused.
So
I get attached to the person, whatever. You typed a plus sign instead of a...
Hey, get off my case.
No, just saying, okay. I get attached to the person and let go of my full set of requirements for a forever relationship. It takes me way too long to break it off. Yeah, I mean, the thing about the long laundry,
hold on.
You wanted to say something.
Yes, I did. So,
sorry.
We advocate what we call slow love.
Yeah.
Slow love. And slow love says, I'm going to wait to get into exclusivity. I'm going to wait to get into a commitment. I'm going to date several people so that I can see what's showing up and how I'm showing up. I'm going to take my time. And when you take your time, you actually speed up the process of getting to the relationship you really want, of getting to your soulmate. And I'll give a perfect example of this. We had a client who, anytime that there was a guy she was dating and he wanted exclusivity, and she thought, well, yeah, we seem to have some things in common, why not? She would jump right in. And she would have these relationships that were 3 months long, 6 months long. I think she said the longest one was 8 months long. And she kept
these tiny little...
She kept having these short relationships, one after another, after another, after another. And it's like, why are you wasting 3 months, 6 months, 8 months with somebody when it's not what you're really looking for. And so when you slow down and you delay exclusivity, you don't find yourself in that trap, because people deselect themselves before, if they're. What was funny was when she met her now husband and she said to him, I'm not ready to go exclusive, I'm actually dating several people. He goes, well, that's weird, but I like you, so okay.
All right, let's see how it works out.
Let's see how it goes.
You're like, all right, that's a
She
little
didn't
weird
scare
for
him
me.
away.
Yeah, that's a little weird for me. Like, she's Asian. She kept telling us, like, Asians don't do that. And although we've had a lot of other people from different cultures tell
other
us
cultures
they don't do
also
that.
don't do that, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah. So Kim says my mistake, which I thought was adorable. Your apologies accepted, no apologies necessary. I think we were just trying to see what you said there. You summed up my problem earlier. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, getting attached to the person means that love can only come from that person. And you don't even know who that person is. That person's a stranger, right? And so it's like balancing the chemistry, the attraction level is part of that equation. Mm-hmm. Because chemistry is one ingredient that you must have for long-lasting love, but it's not the only ingredient. So it's kind of like if you were going to go, to the store and buy stuff to make bread, and you only came home with yeast, and you're like, all right, I'm ready to make that bread. And you're like, oh, shoot, I don't have any flour or salt or anything, it'd be weird. So yeast is not something you even want to just eat on its own, right? So chemistry is that way too. And we're talking about delaying exclusivity, and that also means sex, right? The sexual, physical intimacy, right? So delaying those things. I mean, most women bond with sex anyway. And I think that a lot of times, especially if you have a hard time setting boundaries with people, that it comes off a little harsh, and that there's this miscommunication, right? Because women tend to say no and not instead of not yet. And I think that's one of the biggest things that you can do in the dating process to slow things down is not say no, but say not yet. I mean, it's kind of sexy when you're making out with somebody and it starts to get a little too heavy and you're like, oh, you know what? I'm not ready for this yet. I mean, well, it's going to be really hot when we get there, but not yet. There's something sexy about that.
Definitely.
And so the right person is going to be okay that you take the time you need, right? And if they scamper off, well, then they were just interested in sex anyway. So it's better that they scamper off sooner rather than later. If he scampers off, it's probably not your person.
Yeah. If they can't respect your requests and your boundaries, probably not your person.
Yeah.
And so it's good that they scamper off. You want to scare away the people who aren't a good match for you. We had another client who, no matter who she went on a date with, at the end of the first date, she would always say, well, thank you, I had a good time.
I had a nice time,
thank you so much. Even if she didn't have a nice time. And we're not saying be mean, we're not saying, wow, this was boring, right? Nothing like that.
No,
we're not suggesting that.
But
don't offer up that you're having a good time when you're not, because she ended up having a lot of second dates with guys who she wasn't interested in. But they thought she had a nice time.
That's the other reason you don't want to rescue somebody when it's awkward. So if you're a gal and if you're a lady and a guy is asking you out, it's his responsibility to take you on that date. That means he pays. That means he makes the plans. So he's taking you to a place where it fits his budget, right? He's making the plans. He should travel towards your your direction.
Travel closer to you. He him.
He doesn't need to have your address. You could say, I'm in this part of town, or whatever. You can give him a suggestion. I mean, hello, we all are attached to a handheld device that gives you suggestions of where to eat, even within a particular budget. I mean, it's easy to find, if a guy can't make the plan to take you out, I don't know, there might be something weird going on with that guy. I'm just saying that we make it. I think one of the biggest mistakes women make, and it's kind of that not, having the filter on right through the dating process, is we go along to get along.
Yep.
We go along to get along. And I know we've brought this book up before, but I'm going to bring it up again. But I think it's funny because there was a New York Times best-selling book a long time ago that was called Why Men Love Bitches. And that title is hilarious to me because I don't think it would have been, a book that sold that many copies if it was called Men Love Women Who Know What They Want and Tell Them. And I personally don't think a woman who knows what she wants and tells somebody is a bitch. I don't think that label fits.
Right.
But essentially, I just saved you $20 on the book, or $12-14 on the paperback. You don't have to get it. Why do men like women who know what they want and tell them? because then they don't have to wonder and guess what it is they want. Like, a guy who likes you wants to please you.
We have to realize that that's the driving factor, besides sex, right? The driving factor behind men in relationship is we want to be able to make you happy.
Yeah.
Now, it used to be we want to provide for you, that we would make you happy by giving you a big castle and all the gold and the fancy clothes and everything, right? That's how we make you happy. But now women can get their own castle, however you want, with my analogy, right? So because it's not about providing financially necessarily, it is though about how do I make this woman happy? There's that old saying, and it's an old phrase, and it's so true. Happy wife, happy life. And so men are sort of like wired that way. We want to know what makes you happy. Now, this is if we're interested in a relationship with you. If we're not, then throw all this out because we're going to behave differently. But if we're interested in a relationship with you, we want to know what makes you happy. And if we can provide that to you, we will, because we want to make you happy. We want to be the guy that says, oh, I'm the one that makes you happy. You don't want another man, you want me, right?
I like the accent.
Oh, right?
It's very sexy.
Yes. So you got to realize that this is the dynamic. This is the masculine feminine dynamic, which is built into it. And so when we fall into the natural dynamics, it kind of works. But when we let traditional gender roles get in the way of masculine feminine dynamics, or we confuse the two, that's when we have problems.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say this, like, there's no such thing as a masculine task or a feminine task. You know, working on the car is not masculine, and making dinner is not feminine. Like, those things have nothing to do with it. I mean, we once had a client, like, she's like, wait, this guy wants to fly in and cook me dinner at my place. Like, isn't that feminine? I should tell him that, no, I'll make the dinner. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, that's totally masculine and hot. He wants to come and cook for you at your place?
Yeah.
Damn, girl. Let him do it.
He wants to make you happy.
Yeah. And so the whole idea is loving unfiltered, right? Love unfiltered means you're not wearing a filter, right? That you get to show. And I'm not saying go on a date without any makeup on, you know? I mean, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying put your best foot forward, best face forward, whatever, but don't beat around the bush. Like, if you disagree about something, then disagree about it. I mean, there's plenty of things that Matthew and I disagree about, and then we have like this really fun debate because we're both smart people that like to talk about things.
Yeah.
You know, it just makes life interesting. I mean, it'd be boring if you were somebody, you know, if you ended up, you know, being married to somebody who's just like you'd be like,
or just agrees with everything you say.
oh, that was so weird. That I'm pretty sure it was the pack out of Point Reyes, right? What's your favorite ice? What's your favorite ice cream? Oh, I don't know. What's yours? Like, I know what my favorite ice cream is.
I like chocolate. Oh, I like chocolate too. All right.
I like the healthy debates.
Okay, so we want to thank everyone for joining us and participating in Love Intervention today. I'm Matthew Walters.
Yeah, but before you do that, I don't want to sign off just yet.
Oh.
Will you do me a favor and look at what the 2 weeks date is, because I didn't do that yet.
Oh, you forgot to put that in.
But we have this announcement in our newsletter.
Oh my gosh, you're going to go there?
Yeah,
let's do
because
it.
I want to share our big news. So we have big news to share.
Yep.
We're going to drum roll. We have a book deal.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're going to have a book published in the division of Penguin Random House. It's going to come out spring of 2025, shelves in Amazon near you. So that's a big milestone for us. We're super excited.
We'll tell you more when we get to pre-orders. We'll give you a place so you can get it ahead of time.
And we'll be back with the next Love Intervention in 2 weeks, May 9th. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. Thank you for the congratulations. Huge milestone. We're very excited. We have a wonderful editor, and it's going to be a lot of fun to write our book.
Yeah.
So I'm Orna Walters.
I'm Matthew Walters.
Thank you for joining us tonight for Love Intervention. And like I said, we'll be back in 2 weeks on May the 9th, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for joining us. Yay.